Hi, I'm Lynette Xanders. Today we're talking about one of the most overlooked but powerful tools in the creative process, the creative brief. If your briefs aren't landing or your team feels lost, this video will show you how to craft briefs that inspire creativity and actually get results. Why do so many briefs fail to deliver? I am just going to even start with, if you're not writing briefs, that's probably 80% of your problem. It's the closest thing to a silver bullet I've ever found. So even if they're not perfect, write it down, create a brief. It's, the last place we all agreed before we wander off into creative development. So do them. I think briefs fail to deliver because they're seen to be a job order as opposed to a platform for inspiration. I think when they're poorly done, they are all about the history and the context, which you can give in the briefing, and not as much about what they need to do to solve the problem. I think they fail to deliver when they're cut and pasted from other documents, when they lack a singular point of view, when they're rudimentary as opposed to juicy, my words. But I think the core elements that a brief needs is human insight. I can't write a brief without talking to people, without it sounding really generic. I got to put myself in somebody else's shoes, understand the world from their perspective, and I have to put that forward in such a way that the creative team likes them and understands their problem and wants to solve their problem. I think it's all about, falling in love with the customer and the brand and the relationship that they have. You've got to see the beauty in it. Sometimes you've got to see the tragedy in it. Call a spade a spade. I'll give you a quick example of a brief that I didn't think was going to go well, but actually went well because we understood the real problem. So Amtrak train, obviously, we won the business, and the client was like, we've tried this a million times and nothing's working. And we said, so two things. One was, how has it fallen down in the past? And the client said, well, everybody always focuses on the Seattle to Portland route because it's the shortest and the cheapest. So there are fewer obstacles kind of to taking the train. And we said, do you make any money on that route? He said, no, we actually lose money on that route. And it's way overcrowded because it's cheaper and it's the shortest. We said, where do you make the lion's share of your revenues? So understanding this is kind of the key to the brief, starting with the business objectives. Where, client, do you make the lion's share of your revenues? Oh, we make that from the long haul. So Vancouver, BC to San Francisco is where if we could have two people and pay for the whole everything. So framing that in all its tragedy was, okay, we're asking people to take a train that's going to take them longer than it would take them to drive and cost them more than it would cost them if they flew. And they were like, yeah, that's the job. That's the brief. Okay. So how do we do that? And we couldn't guess, but people are doing it. So I wrote the train, and I wrote it as far as I possibly could, past Portland, south, and looked for people who didn't obviously have a broken arm or a broken leg or some reason why they wouldn't be driving, and tried really hard not to be creepy. It's the job. And I was like, hey, I noticed that you're taking the train on a long distance. Can you tell me why you aren't driving or flying? And they just started going, oh, this is my vacation. My vacation starts the minute I get on. I can do anything that I would do on a Sunday, read or do crossword puzzles or talk to my grandkids or nap, except take a bath. Do everything except take a bath. And it's stress-free. And so we realized that the brief was, Amtrak is not a mode of transportation. It is a land cruise. It's a vacation. And what you can do is give yourself your undivided attention, was the actual brief. So something that inspires why people currently do it, why they love it. So always kind of follow a success story. And it needed, their point of view to make it sing. And I always say, use juicy language. Give yourself your undivided attention. Wasn't rote. It wasn't, pulled out of a document. And it made a huge difference. The creatives were excited to get started on it. We ended up increasing revenues by 31%, with only increasing ridership by 13%, which was important because the train was already full on several sections. And I think where most people fall down when they're writing a brief is that they try to be bulletproof. They try to, pick all the things that nobody can argue with. And I think the key to writing a killer brief is putting yourself out there. It is the first creative idea. And if you can't come up with an idea from it, then you don't have a good brief. I think my brief format is only one page. And the idea of a one-page brief is that it is everything that creative needs to know without, you can append all kinds of things. But if that's all they could remember, that's what happens. Ideas happen in hallways, and they happen on the drive home, and they happen in the shower. And if you can keep it tight enough and keep that one main message to be I call it a bad tagline, something like someone would wear on a t-shirt. Give yourself your undivided attention. I think the first one I ever saw was for Napa Valley Winery. Life's too short to drink cheap wine. It's like, that is a good brief. So I think they also use too much jargon when they go wrong. I think they try to speak to the client. Your audience is the creative department, full stop. If the client doesn't agree with it fundamentally, then you need to sort it out. But you need to remind your client, this is for the creative department. It is not external communications. It is to get them inspired. So if we agree conceptually, you've got to give me some license to make it inspiring. I think briefs are the glue that holds everything together. If you have a web designer over here and a graphic designer over here and the PR agency over there, the brief is the thing that holds it all together, that keeps it cohesive, that keeps it from being 5 different ideas in 5 different forms. What tends to get overlooked in a brief, besides customer mindset, which is huge, is the brand's personality. And sometimes, they'll say, oh, well, for this ad, we want to sound like this. And for this audience, we want to sound like this. And it's almost like you're asking it to be a schizophrenic brand. A brand has one voice. And it's the same no matter where it shows up. So being able to articulate that, you get 3 words, only 3. But you can have a poster child, a brand or a famous person, living or dead, that kind of exemplifies those traits. I think that is the thread that keeps things cohesive when you're not saying exactly the same thing, because different things do different jobs. Your website's going to do a different job than a TV ad. But if it sounds like it comes from the same person, that's where trust is formed. I get the most pushback from tech firms on brand personality. It's like, oh, brand, we don't have personalities. And I'm like, well, you don't have personalities because you don't believe in personalities. So everybody starts sounding the same. But you can tell the brands that show up with their own voice. And I think it's really powerful. Best example I can give you of that is Mini Cooper. Mini Cooper is a BMW under the hood, but they have differentiated themselves by their voice, by how they show up, by being kind of quirky and perky and, say, hey, in some of their ads. It's very much a car ad that doesn't feel like a car ad. And that is the power of brand personality. But I digress. The brief is insanely powerful. And if you can write a good brief, you will always have a job. They get much easier over time. I can write a killer brief in 20 minutes. I do have a book on Amazon on how to write a killer brief. I do loads of workshops on it. And I've got, the pitfalls where briefs fall down. Oh, I'm going to give you another example while I'm here. I had a very large shoe company in one of my workshops for killer briefs, and their target audience was an acronym. I don't even remember the acronym. And I was like, what does that mean? And she was like, I'm not sure, but we all use it. Everybody knows what it means. And I'm like, you got 3 other people from the same company here. So anybody can tell me what this acronym means, what this audience is. It was like yoga moms something. And we're like, no, but we've used it for so long that nobody wants to say, hey, we really don't know what this means. So I was like, unpack it, make it human. People who blank, blank, blank. And the other kind of key thing in the audience is when it's full of demographics. So demographics don't mean anything anymore. You'd have a 24-year-old CEO, a 30-year-old living at home, 40-year-old first-time mom, and a 50-year-old going back to school for another career. So you tell me 25 to 54, and I'm like, it absolutely means nothing unless you're buying media. So it's what do they have in common in terms of what they believe and what they do, beliefs and behaviors. So people who, I think Snapple had the best one. I didn't write this, but it was, they were introducing a mango flavored beverage. So it could have been people who, buy beverages out of a jar, or it could be people who, buy beverages on the road, or people who like fruit juices, but they ended up with people who like the taste of mango. And they ended up putting stickers on actual mangoes in the grocery store. This is Kirschenbaum and Bond. But being able to kind of bring those people to life in terms of beliefs and behaviors is one of the keys to a killer brief. I will also say, process-wise, talk to people in your creative team about it before you write it, because once you write it, you're married to it, and you want to defend it in some way. So talk early, talk often. The upfront part is a team sport. Writing the brief is not a team sport. That's an individual. And then when you brief them, that's again a team sport. I took your ideas. I decided on this. This is where we're going, and this is why. So I have loads to say about briefs. But ultimately, a strong brief is the foundation for strong creative work. And if you want more tools and more insights, go to wildalchemy.com.